So, I think I can officially call the meeting, we don't have a quorum, you may notice. So, after discussion with, Mr. Hall, we can't take any action, so we will, now, adjust the, agenda. We'll, have Mr. Garner give his, presentation on the comprehensive plan. And if we have a quorum show up in the meantime, then we'll have the meeting. But if not, we'll have to reschedule it for another time.
Okay. Well, good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commission members. I'm glad to be here, and we've got a nice crowd out here, which is a good thing. I appreciate the introduction from Richard. I've enjoyed working with him on this, and just want to run through a short version of the draft population and housing sections of the comprehensive plan. Can everybody hear me?
No.
No? Do I need to hear mine? You know, I can just barely walk and chew gum. I don't know if I can hear. How about now? Okay.
Yes, good.
Very good. Okay. So I'm just going to jump right in here and talk about population, what's happened in the last 10 years or so here. County has lost about 7%. Do I have to hold something here? Lost about 7% of the population of the county. The towns have actually been losing population a little faster, lost 9% population average in Cameron and St. Matthews. Cameron actually lost a little more than that, St. Matthews a little less. Black population has declined 16.8%, so a good bit faster than the loss of white population, which is down 3.4. You see a big increase in population of, quote, other races, but that's primarily population that now reports itself as 2 or more races in the census. And that's predominantly folks who report themselves as African American and some other race, mostly white. And then Hispanic population. Hispanic ethnicity is actually sort of a different concept from race. A person can be Hispanic and be black or white or other, whatever. So Hispanic is sort of on top of the race category, the way the census looks at population. That's just that data in a chart. You see that, the other population's way up, but the number's actually pretty small, 312 increase, and Hispanic population grew 29 persons countywide from 2010 to 2020. So the maps here, by the intensity of the color, indicate population per square mile in this case. So you see the highest density of population in the county is, I guess, south or west of, south or east of 601 in St. Matthews. So just so I can point a little easier here, I don't know if this will actually point on this. So these gray boundaries indicate census tracts, and in each census tract is broken up into what they call block groups. There's typically 3 or 4. So you have 4 census tracts in the county, and so not a lot of detail, pretty large areas, but lowest population densities you see here is sort of out towards Fort Mott, and then in the very southern part of the county, whereas you've seen more dense population going up the 176 corridor the area just south of that. So this one shows you how population has changed. So the lightest colors indicate the lowest decreases in population over the last 10 years. The only area that increased in population is sort of the area that has frontage on the lake, that's shown up in green. One of the questions in the last meeting, I think, was, there's got to be some population in the northern part of the county growth in Sandy Run area, and it's kind of hard to tell because they actually split in the last census. This was one block group, and they split it in half this time. So without doing a whole lot more detailed analysis, it's hard to say whether one of those grew a little bit. The decline was only like 28 people in terms of the reduction in population in that area. So I'm going to jump over to housing. There is more detail than that in the draft population chapter of the plan on the website. So housing didn't really change much. Occupancy rate stayed about the same in 2020 as it was in 2010. 82.9% of all the housing units in the county are occupied. You've got 61% of the housing is single family. The census says the median value of owner-occupied housing was just under 110,000, and 36% is mobile home manufactured homes. You've had an increase in total housing since 2010 to a little over 2%. And a lot of folks immediately ask, how do you get more houses but fewer people? Well, number of people per household is down. Some of that is people having fewer kids, more single person households, function of aging, losing a spouse, divorce, single parents, all those things contribute to that. So you actually had a 6% decrease in the average persons per household in the last 10 years. And that's a national trend. That's not something unique here. That's very, very common to see that. And it's also fairly common to see areas where they've added houses and the population has dropped anyway. So it's not an unusual thing. That's just a chart of that information. I'm not going to go into great detail about it. Again, the analysis that I've done on housing is by census tract. It gets a little more complicated with housing to go down to the block groups. So I've kind of put a name on each of these 4 census tracts that you see here, with the one that says 9501. I just called it the West, and that's got the Sandy Run area and the other western part of the county. Central tract that's sort of where we are, and going back up 176, and then I've called that other census tract that's sort of the east or southeast part of St. Matthews, and that part of the central county I've just called it St. Matthews. It's a lot more than just part of the town St. Matthews, but just for convenience to have a name that makes it clear what we're talking about. And then the east tract is all that with Fort Mott along the river and down towards the lake and Cameron. So that makes it a little clearer. Some of the maps or some of the tables and charts use those names, because if I put census tract 9501, you're going to look at me like I'm crazy. Nobody can understand that, right? Even I can't understand that. I've just spent a month dealing with this data. So almost 8% of the houses in the county have been built since 2010. 26% was built before 1970, so it's getting a little older. Obviously, the oldest housing on average is in the St. Matthews area, and the newest housing on average is in the western part of the county, sort of Sandy Run and close to Lexington. And actually, the highest highest housing values are in St. Matthews area, so 601 heading down east and south. So this just tracks those, and I don't know if you can really see those very well. By the red shows what percent of the houses are vacant, with the blue being the occupied houses. So the west tract actually is sort of in the middle on vacancy. St. Matthews actually has a pretty low vacancy rate, the lowest of all the census tracts. And then the east shows up with a pretty high vacancy rate. Some of that may be influenced by having some, sort of summer homes and lake stuff in the area. Don't know. Just speculating there. So this shows you housing type in each census tract. And again, the text is a little small on here, it'd be easier to read if you take a look on the website. Again, predominantly single family, and which is the dark blue, and what census calls mobile home is everything, mobile homes, manufactured homes, all of it is the light blue. You'll see in St. Matthews a little bit of two-family housing, duplexes, and then in the central tract, which is sort of the northwestern part of St. Matthews here on this side of 601, you see some single-family attached, which is typically a townhouse, but I haven't really seen any townhouses here, so I'm a little confused by what I'm seeing on the ground driving around. And there's some multifamily housing here in St. Matthews, which is the purple. So without belaboring that anymore, this just shows age. I think what's interesting, or most interesting here, is this block that's the 1949 and earlier housing. Again, it's a lot on this side of St. Matthews, not much anywhere else. And then the red here really sort of shows up that you've had, fair amount of growth in housing in that west tract, which is Sandy Run and stuff close to Lexington. Home values, the orange is over 300,000, and the dark blue is less than 50,000 in terms of the value. And again, that's not tax assessor values, that's what census is reporting as values, and they may not perfectly line up. I'm going to investigate that a bit. So keeping it brief, you can look at more detail on the two chapters on the website.
So I want to show everybody what we've got. I'll show you where you can get this information at on the website. So when you go to the county's website, we've added a new page, the 2024 comprehensive planning process. That is where all this information will be stored. So when you go to the page, John's kind of given a little bit of a high-level synopsis of what the comprehensive planning process is. And then you'll see the 10 elements of the comprehensive plan. We've got some links here. One that is helpful if you really want to look at the process is the 2014 Calhoun County Comprehensive Plan is there, so it kind of gives you an idea of what this looks like at a completed level. The 2018 Comprehensive Planning Guide for Local Governments is like a desktop Bible for what you do with planning, and then the guide to land use planning is there as well. Now we get down to the overview, the Calhoun County Comprehensive Plan overview. This is the presentation that Mr. Garner made at the work session we had last month. So that's a PDF of the presentation there you can go back and look at. And then when you come down here, this is the presentation you just saw tonight, the population and housing study presentation. And then when he referenced a little bit more detail, this is actually the language in a little more detail of what he's got that he kind of summarized tonight. That'll go into that, into each one of those elements. So there is a population element and a housing element that you And then as we go through this over the next 18 months or so, each one of these elements will be fleshed out as we've done here. There's a sign-in sheet in the back of the room, and there was one the last time. For anybody that wants to get on an email list for public, we'll have at least 3 public sessions, charrettes to go as we go through this process to get public input, and we'll be putting out some information, doodle poll type things to put out with some questions just to get feedback from the community. So if you want to get on that list, if you haven't already signed up at the last meeting, the sign-up sheet is in the back. We'll add you to the list, and as we populate these and as we get these meetings and we get the calendars done, that's another thing I probably should add. I'll add the calendar, the proposed calendar of our steps. We'll get that put on the website as well as we move forward with that. So we'll move forward with that. Unless you guys have any questions, do you have something else?
Or comments, anything?
You know, obviously, this is a lot of information to take at one time. You know, so this is just kind of the overview, you know, take it back, study it, look at it, get questions, input on that.
One thing I don't do anymore is write big, long novels or planning documents. You know, back when I started this business, you know, we did what I now call consulting by the pound. You kind of figured out how many pages you could generate and make it look like you were staying busy, you know. Nobody reads that stuff. So I'm going to try to give you stuff that, you know, is fairly succinct. We'll be adding a little more descriptive narrative to those couple of chapters in the final draft. And responded to any thoughts or comments or requests for, you know, a little more detail or information about anything specifically, but like to keep the words to a minimum in these because most people just don't sit down and read long documents. So if you look at the old comprehensive plan, it's a very gray, wordy document. I'm not gonna do that to you, unless you make me, and you'll have to probably beat me to make me do it. What I do wanna do, the last thing, I kinda gave you some homework, and I'd like to go through this little exercise, that is really something you do in a lot of corporate strategic planning, but I found it works pretty good in local planning like this. And it helps people focus on, I've got to grab a pen. I think it helps you focus on some of the key issues in the community, and also helps me understand how you think about your community. So what I do with this is just go through strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats. And if you remember, I assigned you all homework, and I expect you to have lots of thoughts about it, and see what, you know, see what we come up with. We did this in the plan I did for Sandy Run a few years ago, and we went through that same exercise with several different groups, and it's real interesting. All of them look pretty similar. When you ask everybody who was interested and engaged what they thought the strengths of the county were, or that area of Sandy Run, they were pretty similar, you know. So that's what I'd like to go through with you here. And we'll stick these on the wall, and maybe after we go through it with Planning Commission, we can give the folks in the audience a chance to chime in if they think there's something missing, or you think we're, you know, crazy, or you'd like to see something else added to it. What do you think the strongest things about the county are? What do you like the most about it? What do you like about living here, working here, whatever you do? What are the good things and the big positives about Calhoun County?
I think the location probably.
Location?
Right. Being close to Columbia and not too terribly far from Charleston.
There you go.
We're like 2 hours from the beach, 2 hours from the mountain.
That's right there.
Location.
Yeah, in the middle.
Okay. What else?
The
some cases, folks are gonna say that's a weakness, but that's good. Rural lifestyle, I mean, you wanna elaborate a little bit, what is it, I mean, I drove around some today, and I'd never been out to Fort Mott. I took a picture of the Fort Mott Town Hall from 1906 or whatever year it was, it's still standing there. Fort Mott obviously didn't ever take off, but hadn't seen a lot of cotton growing in South Carolina until the last few years. I saw more cotton, I think, driving around today than I've seen in a long time. So agricultural views, it was really quiet. I got out of the car to take a picture of the old white church there on Fort Mott Road. I forget the name of it. And you could have heard a pin drop. I stood in the middle of the road and not a car came by and heard a pin drop. So quiet.
Agriculture is still the number one, it's the number one industry in the county still.
Well, and most people won't know it's number one in the state.
It is, by far.
Agriculture is the number one industry in South Carolina. Quiet. I'm guessing you can see the Milky Way still in some places here. I never see the Milky Way where I live. Quiet, dark, agricultural. Okay. What else?
I think some of the taxes were pretty good over the years. I mean, I don't know how much they're changing, but I know that I compare my taxes to some of my friends in Lexington County, which
Low taxes.
were substantially better than some of them, property taxes especially,
Okay.
vehicle tax and stuff like that.
Low property tax. Okay. What else? Gotta be some other stuff. Hadn't heard from Mr. Pete. The people. I was expecting that at some point, so I'm glad you brought it. What about the people? They're mean to each other, or are they pretty nice, or they're all pretty, young? What is it? Friendly. What are some other things that make Calhoun good, strong place to live? If somebody asks you about Calhoun County, what do you brag about?
Nothing.
Don't go there. We'll get to that in a minute. Hold on.
He's trying to keep them away.
Yeah.
He's trying to keep them away.
Okron?
Yeah, definitely in comparison to other counties, definitely.
Well, what I'm gonna do is kind of keep it on them, and at the end of it, we'll put these on the wall, and then we'll kind of get your reaction. Did we miss something? Is there something there you don't think ought to be there, kind of get the, Okron.
Yeah,
So it's a safe community is what you
It's
say.
definitely lower, but it's definitely probably increasing in certain spots, I'll say that, because I've been here for a long time, and, I never had any issues the last year or two.
You think COVID's had something to do with that? Crime's up everywhere in the country. People at home, maybe not getting a paycheck, or maybe not staying occupied, idle hands, devil's workshop, that kind of thing. Okay. What else?
You got the river too. A lot of people like to do boats and stuff. You got the lake on the other.
Recreation.
The recreation boat.
That's that from the river and the lake.
Yeah, river. Yeah, I'll be looking at my cheat notes. I've got a file somewhere that I've got what I thought you'd say. I'm just gonna take a look, see if I was on target. I'm not gonna say what I have down. River, lake. It's funny how a lot of people, even when there's a lake, they still call it the river. I think watery, that's real common, right? People still call Lake Marion the river, or do you make a distinction between the lake and the river more? No.
I do.
Well, I mean, people know watery is a lake, but a lot of them still call it the river, going down to the river.
That's all the Congaree.
You got the Congaree, the
Congaree's
Santee.
running all along the whole
Right.
northern side.
Right.
A lot of access there. I mean, I guess like hunting and fishing and all that falls into the rural
Okay, yeah, but I'm gonna put recreation and put that. My son's been seeing an 8-point buck on his game camera, the little piece of land he hunts, and he's pretty excited about going out Saturday morning. I might have to get up really early. Okay, hunt fish. Anything else? We ought to put on there? My writing's not great, I'm sorry. Okay, let's stick this up on the wall. All right. Well, we call this a SWOT exercise, SWOT, so weaknesses is the second one. What are the weaknesses here? What would you change or make better if you could?
No public transportation.
No public transportation? So, and I'm assuming that you've got in mind, specific areas where people have some mobility issues and they don't get where they need to go. Is that mainly St. Matthews here? I mean, St. Matthews, where would you be looking to connect public transportation to get people to the services and jobs and those?
Well, some people that do not have cars can't get the only way, like the camera and everything.
Okay. Well, and you've only got one grocery store in the county too, right? That's a bit of an issue.
I think that's another thing too, is the land, the cost of the land, how it's gotten kinda high, like, I mean, I think I've seen some land sales run like 10,000 an acre. And I mean, the cost of land for a rural county, you would think it'd be a little bit better than that. But when you start looking on, different websites, the cost of land is a little higher than what you would expect.
Well, and you're pretty close to Columbia,
Yeah,
you've probably got some investors that are starting to buy some land for the long term, those guys that buy and hold it for 40 years, thinking that, eventually it's, something's just gonna be more valuable. Schools, okay. Talk about that. You got kind of a mix of.
The one high school, and I think we lose a lot of students from the outskirts.
When you have like us in Sandy Run, where you could go to Swansea and drive 10 minutes, or you could drive to St. Matthews and drive 20 minutes, 25 minutes. But that's that's
Long distance for kids to get to school. One public high school, you've got private school, at least one, right? Right, okay. What else? A weakness. I mentioned grocery,
Yeah.
you don't have a lot of retail here.
Yeah, definitely, I guess we were right about retail and restaurants, because
How busy is Dollar General is?
I don't know how many restaurants in St. Matthews now, I mean, 3 maybe, 3 like,
Cause what, there's one right here on the corner,
yep. And you got the house pizza,
House Pizza,
you got a subway or substation over there.
substation,
You got your-
Tracy's, the Chinese restaurant.
Chinese restaurant.
Town Country, six or seven.
Now, there's a little bistro I came by up here that's, I think, still open, I'm not sure.
I don't think Earth's is still open.
Not Eartha, that was
Is
it.
Earth's still open, right? Must have.
It's like 2 days a week, I didn't know it was just an old sign.
Yeah, when in Sandy Run, you don't have hardly anything either, so
Right,
you want to
okay.
move GLE Sandy Run.
Katie's.
Yeah, unless it's lunchtime, yeah, or a gas station,
Right.
but for like supper and evenings.
So where do people go to shop for groceries, if they don't do the Piggly Wiggly, I mean?
I guess
So
from
Orangeburg.
Orangeburg or Columbia, I mean, everybody up in St.
Yeah,
John,
we-
I think go to Columbia.
We go to Casey,
Now people go to Ellery.
there you go, on that end.
Okay, Ellery's got a grocery store too.
Yeah.
can be a weakness then, sort of, you know. So y'all didn't say that, I did, so I'm not putting it on here unless you think that.
What was it again?
I don't know if that's a weakness,
Losing population.
I mean,
Well, it's a limiting factor, let's put it that way, it may not be a weakness, but it,
when it limits your growth.
you're not gonna see another grocery store or another high school.
If you have the growth.
So maybe it's better to call that a limiting factor rather than necessarily a weakness, because it's obviously, some people don't really see that as a problem. I've got a few neighbors that wouldn't hurt my feelings if we lost population, but that's those are the key ones, it sounds like, okay? And we'll poll the audience at the end of it to see if they think we're missing something. Thank you, sir. Okay, opportunities.
Rich, do you know what percentage of the county was covered by the internet, the fiber? Tri-County customer?
High-speed internet?
Well, no, we got that, I mean, through Tri-County now, I don't know what.
It's not a huge, no, it's definitely not a strength of us yet. I think we'll get there, but no, it's not a strength yet. There's still a good
More,
portion
I
of
guess,
business.
more high-speed internet.
Yeah.
There's
There's still areas that don't have cell phone coverage very well, so, yeah.
But that is an opportunity to get better broadband, let's call it expand, yeah, more broadband.
Yeah.
Okay. What else? Maybe look at the notes, I don't want to be. Think about the strengths that you listed and what some opportunities are in there. You know?
When you say opportunities, you mean things that would draw people to the county?
Not necessarily, just, you know, what are things that would make the county better? I mean, obviously, some folks think more people doesn't make it better. So, what would, you know, what are some things that improve?
Some of the same things you talked about with schools, more than one public high school,
Okay.
you know,
Well, the school district has bought a piece of land up in Sandy Run area.
yeah.
I'm gonna start in Northern County without getting too specific.
For the last 30 years, people that were working out of town,
Right.
an opportunity for a job. Before Carolina East became Maine, after a lot of people worked in Columbia and Orangeburg, we had no, industry, no industry.
Okay.
The job opportunity.
So, got an industrial park on the, up around Eastman, so more industry. Local jobs, so people aren't having to commute as much. That also, tax base, you know, helps on that low taxes thing too. What else? Other opportunities? Well, I'm gonna throw this one out. What about, you know, a lot of rural areas have, worked on, tourism based on their local natural resources. You've got a river. You're the only county adjacent to a national park in South Carolina. It's across the river, but it's on your boundary. Is that an opportunity that you think? And I'm gonna tell you one reason I bring that up. A few years ago, 2 years ago, I was staying at camping at Sesqui State Park, for a couple days. in Columbia on the north side, and there was a couple sites up from me, probably in the early seventies, RV camping from somewhere out west, I can't remember. And, just asked them what brought them there, and they said, "Oh, we came out to visit Congaree National Park, but there's no place around there to camp. This is the closest place to camp that we could find." So, you know, seems like that could be an opportunity. We talked about that some in the Sandy Run plan. There wasn't a lot of enthusiasm about that, so I think some of that gets back to the too many people. No, don't want that.
That's our river.
Well,
I can tell you some stories about people that left the trail over there and walked all the way to the river and stopped me at dark with little kids and said, "Where am I at?" And I said, "You're not supposed to leave the trail. You in Sandy Run now. Good luck. That's a 2.5-mile walk in the dark."
no, I
I
understand.
love it.
But I brought that up because it's one of the things that I see out there, that there's not a lot of places in the world next to a national park. Something to think about. Does that cover what you think? Well, let's do the last one then, which is threats. So threats would be, you know, what are the things that could hurt the county, make it a worse place to live, make it less desirable, whatever.
Too much growth.
Too much growth. So I'm gonna put growth, and then that's both rate and speed, or rate and the amount. Let's see. How fast and how much. What's another threat to the quality of life and the lifestyle here? What?
No, I was just saying that one topic covers a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of,
I'm aware of that.
a lot of the,
Because really, if you think about what's gonna come and affect the county and what everybody enjoys here, I mean, that's the biggest thing that you see, because it takes you from rural to condensed down to people on top of it, you know.
Okay.
And I think that's what more people worry about doing, than you say, and then down to the lower end, I guess.
Okay.
I guess population here, say, that's a lot more condensed. Anyway.
I mean, we've all kind of been hitting that, but the more decline of population is, I guess, kind of a threat, you know, because
Well, at some point it starts to affect your ability to deliver basic government services, or it starts to drive your tax rates up, or it can. A lot of that is a function of, you keep recruiting industry, because industry is what keeps residential property taxes low. So, yeah, so I'm gonna put population. And impact on, really is taxes and county operations. Some things just astonish me as I drive around here. Being a planner, I'm always looking at infrastructure and stuff like that, and I'm standing in front of a little church there in Fort Mott in the middle of nowhere, and not one car's been by in 10 minutes, look on the side of the road, there's a water meter there, and I'm like, man, they've got public water. I hadn't passed a house or a car in miles and miles, but there's a water line right here. It gets expensive to maintain that kind of infrastructure when you start losing population. What else? Other threats. I mean, I don't think you have the kind of threats you've seen in some communities, and, you know, I'm not sure that anybody in, you know, 1975 or 80 would have predicted that the Navy base in Charleston would close. And a lot of folks thought it was the end of the world, and they took that problem and turned it into an advantage over time. Greenville, where I live, used to, you know, market itself as the textile capital of the world. And when textile jobs first started moving to Taiwan, which is where they went first, I think, and those, the Pacific Rim countries, a couple smart people figured out, this might be a problem rather than an advantage, and so they started diversifying the economy. But if Greenville had not lost the textile industry, it wouldn't be the place that it is now. So sometimes those bad things that happen, even if you don't identify them in advance, can become a rallying point to get people to focus on what you gotta do to move on. Is there anything else? Did that prompt any thoughts? I don't have anything else. You look back over them, you think we kinda got them more or less covered? Again, I don't wanna belabor this forever, it's a fairly simple exercise. If you go to a corporate planning retreat, you might spend, all day on that stuff, it'll take forever, and everybody goes to sleep. Don't wanna do that, but the exercise, I think, does kind of help you think about it, and I think it also starts to help you start talking about goals and objectives for each piece of the plan. The state doesn't require you to do planning, but if you do it, they do require you to do it a certain way, and that's that whole comprehensive planning process, why we got these 10 elements, and they require you to do goals and objectives. Goals are pretty broad things, like increase opportunity for jobs, and an objective there might be recruit 200 more industrial jobs. Or, another goal that you might come out of that with would be, improve or reduce travel time to schools. An objective would be get a second high school open within 15 years or something like that. Something you can measure that sets a specific thing that you want to achieve. And then strategies for how you do that. So we'll go into that a little more. We'll take a crack at drafting some goals and objectives and strategies for these two sections of the plan and get your feedback on at that point. I said I'd ask the audience if they thought we missed anything. And I am kind of standing between these folks and probably a low country boil somewhere or something, but I'll throw it open. Just raise your hands first. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm a radio teacher. I teach amateur radio. I teach radio period. Also teach Bible. So I live by the book. I'm concerned for the moral decline in my culture. And so when you start talking about growth, I'm thinking of turning a nice rural, you're talking about strength, low crime. We have relatively low crime. We don't have near the police we need, and yet we've got, it's not perfectly covered, but we're doing fairly well. But that's because we have a rural, I don't know what to call it, a rural culture. Has nothing to do with color or race or anything. We have a rural culture. If you look in the United States, the red and the blue, and the red is usually all the rural areas, and the blue is the urban areas. And so now we have a culture that wants to do, it's tearing apart our culture, period. They want to tear it apart. It's this, Marx, what do they call it? It probably won't fit in here, but this whole urban climate is terrible. I just don't want it. So that's one thing. I had a neighbor come last night, wants to hunt our land and stuff, and he wanted to know if he could buy a piece of property right next to ours because he doesn't want anybody moving in. He doesn't want people close by. And I think that's a lot of folks here. That's why a lot of us are here. We like it rural.
Right.
We don't like a lot of people. I don't want the urban morality or immorality. What
Well, I think you're kind of straying pretty far into assuming that urban immediately means immorality. It doesn't. There's lots of good Christians and lots of good people who share your beliefs and your morals who live in dense urban areas.
You deal in charts and everything, I defy you to show me charts that,
I live in an urban area.
Higher crime?
No, we have some of the lowest crime in the state. I live in city of Malden, has one of the lowest crime rates in the country, but just got named to the Fortune 25 list of great places in South Carolina or something, but crime was a big part of it. So I think you do jump and start to paint with a little too broad of a brush when you say that growth ensures that.
understand rural.
All right.
I got married 39 years ago.
Okay.
I came down here, I was from Pennsylvania, so I was a damn Yankee.
Well, some people would add some things to that because you didn't go back. You know.
So my point was, usually I come from urban, what do? I'm an electronics tech. I've been down here, I was tolerated because I was Chrisley Pravat's son-in-law. It's not what I did, it's who I am. That's the difference. And I'd like to preserve, I mean, that was new to me, that was foreign to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to preserve that.
Got it.
And I think most of us here, am I right or wrong, I think we want to preserve that. That's a strength.
Family
Gotcha.
roots, yeah.
That's a
Preserve the rural culture that you have. Like,
Neighbors watch out.
we've heard that a lot.
Land or whatever,
Got another one here.
I think one of our strengths is our history.
History.
We have a lot of history in this county, everywhere throughout the county.
Good. I need to talk to you because when we get to that cultural resources element of this plan, I need some people to help me out with that. But that's
And
that's
I
good.
actually had two parts. I had a weakness.
Okay.
I don't know the legality of requiring an industry to hire a certain percentage of the population that they're at. But I can tell you, I don't know a soul that works at Starbucks.
Yeah. No, I don't
I
think
know
you
maybe one of
pretty
two
common.
people that work at TPAC.
Yeah.
Carolina Eastman is the only company I know that hires a lot of people that are fairly local, Orangeburg and Calhoun.
Okay.
So that's a weakness to me. They should recruit within the area. You know, the gentleman mentioned earlier, somebody mentioned earlier, you know, we need more industry. Well, we need that industry to support the area that it's in somehow.
Right.
Again, I don't know the legalities of if you can actually require them to hire a certain percentage. I don't know.
I don't know. Some of them do have targets
They're getting a
for
tax
that.
We give them tax incentives to come here,
Yeah.
but what benefit is that to us if we're not getting any taxes from them and they're not hiring anybody local?
Okay. No, that's good. That's good. Other one.
If I'm not mistaken, the tax breaks that Calhoun County gives industry is usually based on the number of jobs that are generated.
Right. It is.
That's it.
Yeah, and that's typical because it is, as you say, the legalities of setting targets and holding people to it.
That's not the only thing it's based on. SSRC credits are based on jobs. Tax FILOs are not based on jobs.
Right.
SSRC credits are based on jobs.
Okay. Well, that's sort of the same, in the same vein, yeah.
Let me bring up something else though. I've talked to some real estate agents, and they project, because that's their job, is to future growth.
Mm-hmm.
And they looked at everything around Columbia, and they usually say that everything that can be done for growth around Columbia, KC West Columbia, is done. It's pretty well a closed shop. Calhoun County is the only area where we still have a lot of land that is available for the investors.
Right.
Now, one of the things that I don't know how you do this, the planning commission, the county council, whatever it is you need to be proactive, you need not reactive. We need to take a look at all our utilities, water, sewer, fire, sheriff, everything, and plan for the future. I just don't think that in the future, 10, 20, 30 years from now, that industry is going to bypass Calhoun County.
Well, the key ingredient for most industry is sewer capacity. You gotta have lots of sewer. Or at least adequate sewer. And, right now it's, pretty limited. So, how should I write that? Infrastructure to support, enable growth, that's gonna raise some other red flags in this room when I write that
Oh,
down.
yeah, it definitely will.
Okay. And I don't wanna go forever with this, but I think we can take another maybe 10 minutes.
We had two back there.
Yeah, I know we do, and I just wanna, I don't wanna,
I understand.
I said I'd try to keep my piece to an hour, and that's.
I have an opportunity. We've said that agriculture is one of our strengths. I think one of our opportunities is to promote our agricultural industry,
Okay.
highlighting it, supporting our local farmers. I work for the Department of Agriculture, so, that's something, there's a push and a need and a want for local products.
Mm-hmm.
Agriculture is our biggest industry in this county. We need to promote that.
Has anybody tried doing like a CSA, community supported agriculture effort, maybe in St. Matthews or anywhere? I mean, and you do, as I know Councilman Nelson raises grass-fed beef, Angus cows, and obviously lots of farming going on here. You've got cotton, you've got, I don't know, some other grain that I didn't identify that I saw a lot of.
There's, the peanuts, there's, U-pick operations down around Cameron, there's,
Okay.
Smaller farms, there's, a U-pick operation up in Sandy Run. We've got local producers. You mentioned beef, but there's also pork and chicken
I
producers.
saw rabbit on the sign out in Fort Mont.
Give the farmers a tax incentive. They probably do to a degree, but give them better.
Okay, that's a good one. Yes, ma'am.
I've lived here all my life, and I'm 75 years old. And I know a lot of people in St. Matthews, but I know more than that in Sandy Run, because that's where I've always lived.
Mm-hmm.
But people look out for each other. If they go past your house and something is out of place, or there's something that looks strange, or there's smoke coming from somewhere, they call for help, and they try to call you if they know your number or something. So this would go away totally, because if you get a whole bunch of new people in and they don't know who you are, they don't know whose house that is, I'll just drive by, they probably somebody in there, So it takes away, the care and the respect we have for each other that we've had for years.
Right.
And one more thing that's a little bit different from that is, I think that by all these industries coming in, they don't care what land they buy. But we have some old houses, we have one that's on the historic registry, and when you put it on the historic registry, you can buy the land, but you cannot touch the house.
That's actually not correct.
It's on the internet, so they're wrong then, but it's on the internet, because I read.
You have to have a local designation. National Register of Historic Preservation requires that you do certain things, but it doesn't prevent you from tearing the house down. It basically means you have to document everything about the house and do all this stuff and try to look at options for not tearing it down, but at the end of the day, it's a property rights thing, and a person can still tear that house down, and it happens fairly often.
Well,
So
that's.
by itself, it doesn't protect the property. That's why you have these local historic districts in Charleston and Columbia and places. That's the tool you have to have in place to prevent something from being demolished.
So it doesn't matter if they want to buy a historic, a piece of land, whether it's a historic house, it, you know, they just go ahead and tear it down, so part of our history is gone, because
Right.
there's nothing to prevent that.
I'd like to get both of you to help us when we get to looking at the history and historic resources in the county, because you both clearly care a lot, know a lot about what's going on. So I hope you'd be willing to sit down and help me with some of that, because I don't know all these things. I pass some things and say, wow, that looks like a really neat historic building. Of course, I passed this old, I think it's a laundromat, or was the last time, sort of an old 1950s sort of streamlined building up on Main Street, just up on the, if you're going out, it's on the right, brick building.
Oh, I know, it was a dry cleaner, wasn't it?
Yeah, dry, it was dry, I don't know what it was originally, but it's kind of a cool building.
Can I ask you a question?
Other stuff, listen.
We've got an upcoming expansion of I-26.
Yep.
How do you see that affecting Calhoun County?
Oh, you know.
I mean, the traffic's an obvious answer, but outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have fewer wrecks and your EMS won't be quite as busy on the weekends in the summer.
Less traffic on the back
You know,
roads.
more traffic does some things, but, you know, a wide highway by itself, if a wide highway by itself brought economic development, you'd have 601 from here to Orangeburg just covered up. I mean, it's not. It's infrastructure, sewer, water, all that other stuff that you know, are the keys to that. Sewer especially, you can usually get water, but sewer. Yes, ma'am?
Why can't these people look more towards Cameron instead of exit 125? Or, because 129, there are so many cars that get off there compared to when we first moved out there. And now, I mean, you know, it's like, you go down Calvary Church, it's house after house after house that is going in. That's Lexington County, but it affects Calhoun County too, because it's the traffic patterns.
Right.
And those people are coming to that bridge, and Calhoun people come to the bridge, I mean, it is, sometimes it's terrible, and when there's an accident, it's even hard to get out on 21 at times.
And what, okay, that's the US 21 exit you're talking about, yeah.
And when there's anything that happens, people get off at 125, they come down, is it Road 34? Is that the road? They come down Valley Bridge, but they also come down to the stop sign, Old Sandy Run Road, and then come down 176 to 129 and get back on, and it is really, really bad. So I realize that the interstate's gonna help with that, but right now, it's sure not. And that's something to consider all the way down when
Right.
they start in.
Well, to me, that goes along with infrastructure.
Right, right.
And another thing I've got to comment on is you talk about businesses, you know, getting business in here. When the businesses come in, they don't pay the same as town pays. They pay a lot cheaper. And that is one of the problems. Because my son is driving a truck for somebody in the area, and he was making probably double working for Old Dominion. But because of an accident, he was let go. And so he's working for this other company, he's only paying half of what he was paid. And that is really sad news. They need to be competitive if they're gonna hire people.
Okay. Let me see if I can squeeze that in. Wages lower. I can read that whether y'all believe it or not.
I just have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
The St. Matthew's School Board bought a piece of property right next to our property.
Oh, on US 21.
No, on, Pravat Road.
Yes.
Well, it's off of 21, yeah,
Okay.
21 and Pravat, that's. Well, if they build a school there, or if they build, whatever they build, that cuts out our funding, doesn't it? Because we can't be shooting when there's children around. And it's right next to the. So, do they ever take those kind of things into consideration?
No, I doubt it, I don't know, you know.
You know, but why would they choose to put
Anybody got anything urgent that we think we've missed? Think this is useful exercise to help you think about what we're trying to do here? Because what we're trying to do here is go through a process where we develop a plan that actually reflects what the community wants to see happen. That's what planning is supposed to be about. You know, you get, the world's full of conspiracy theories these days. And folks think, oh, well, they just are doing this to cover up what they're really trying to do over here, the old smoke and mirrors thing. That's really not what this is about. I don't think anybody thinks that. And I certainly don't operate that way because one of the things I've enjoyed about working here is this kind of interaction and hearing how much you care about your community. I don't have to live here, so I'm not going to try to force anything on you. I don't really have a dog in the fight. Y'all have to live with what we come up with, so it needs to be your plan. So if you buy into it and you understand, again, these things do help. And if you understand what's good about the county and what the threats and weaknesses and opportunities are, and everybody kind of starts to get all the horses pulling in the same direction, you get to where you're going.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes, sir.
As I understand it, we don't have a quorum here.
Yeah, there's no any action being
So they
taken.
cannot vote on any action. Well, that sort of says a lot about the people who didn't show up. They don't care.
I can't touch that.
That's just my comment, nobody else's.
Well, they're probably always looking for some more planning commissioners. You got a card? He has the idea that gets implemented. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Could I ask one more thing? There was something about, on, Sandy Run Crossing, where they were gonna have commercial, they were gonna have 3 divisions. Does anybody else know what I'm talking about? But anyway, they were going back to the wetlands.
I'm not.
I don't know why you would build on wetlands.
You don't.
Generally, you can't,
You
yeah.
don't. So nobody can build on the wetlands.
Okay.
That is protected. All right, I'm gonna do these last 2, and then we'll let y'all wrap up. I appreciate your patience. You probably get pretty tired of me. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to see more grocery stores and more restaurants, I mean, high-class restaurants or whatever in Sandy Run area. You don't have anything. If you want something to eat, you'd have to go Columbia or somewhere else.
Well, and when we were doing the plan in Sandy Run, a lot of folks said, well, we opposed that Dollar General. Man, I wish they'd put more grocery stuff in the Dollar General there, but whatever. I'm just gonna write it down. Yeah, and there's always mixed feelings about that in that area, because again, you know, one of the things that I was prevented from putting in the actual wording of the plan by the guy that I was working for up at Central Midlands was one of the things people said, we don't want this to look like Columbia Avenue in Lexington, and that's what everybody's terrified of, I think.
Columbia's only 15 minutes away. I'll go there too.
Right. And there was one more. Yes, ma'am.
I'm speaking in defense of the lack of quorum. We have talked about rural and farmers. Right now, the farmers in the area we live, which is Cameron, are very busy with cotton and peanuts, and that's exactly why I think some are not here. One of our strengths can be a weakness for me.
Well, that's good. Well, I certainly appreciate your attention and your comments. I think this is a good session. I think it's a good way to kind of get this kind of process started, is to really get good feedback from the folks who've got to live with the decisions and plans that get put together. Thank you all for coming. I really enjoyed this little exercise. Hope you have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your patience.
That's right. But as a strength.